Hello everybody, welcome to Andrew Broussard Watercolors. Today we are going to be doing a watercolor painting using kind of the standard Ranson palette, and we're going to focus on getting that fall vibe. With this, I just wanted to lay out the colors that I'm going to be using. I have burnt sienna, which is PBR 7, light red oxide, which is PR 101, the alizarin crimson U, so that's a synthetic. This is PR 206. Sap green from Da Vinci, which is a mixture of PG 7, which I think is the phthalo green, and PY 42, which is some sort of yellow. Lemon yellow, which is PY 175. Burnt umber. I think I have this too squished to see, but it's in there. Yeah, PBR 7. Ultramarine, blue, PB 29. Raw sienna, PBR 7. So I think all three of these, burnt sienna, burnt umber, and raw sienna, are PBR 7. It's just from the earth, or it's a synthetic. I think they have what they call the Mars colors, which are synthetic colors. And then Payne's Gray, which is, in this case, is a mixture of the black, PBK 6, which is carbon, and PB 27. All right, I just wanted to kind of name those. Somebody was asking about that in a previous video, so I wanted to go through that. So let me pause this real quick and put out the paints. Okay, so we're going to start things off with this quarter sheet of Stonehenge Aqua. It is 140 pound, cold press, 100% cotton. The 100% cotton is really just a really good way to go. Find a brand that you enjoy and one that you get used to. The paper pulp, the quote-unquote lower quality watercolor paper, pills easier, doesn't scrape as well, and just generally gives a lot of issues. So I highly recommend getting 100% watercolor, 100% cotton paper. Sorry about that. So with today, we're going to focus on playing with fall colors. It's going to be an imaginary scene. It's more going to be the kind of application of color and texturizing than working from a photograph or anything like that. And I'm going to start off with a little light wash of ultramarine blue. Now I'm using the Ranson hake brush, which is a hake brush that has been kind of pre-worn, and it allows me to get different texturized effects with this brush, as opposed to kind of just a standard hake brush, which is used for just broad washes. Guys, be nice. You can hear the cats in the background just being little demons to each other. So we have the ultramarine blue, washing it above and below. Not quite sure what I want to do scene-wise, but I'm just getting that wash down. Switch these lights. Let's grab a little bit of raw sienna. I'm not cleaning the brush. I find that if I mix a little bit of raw sienna with that ultramarine, I kind of get a dulled down, I guess we would call it like a gray, and just enjoy that colored effect. Okay, now on to the background. We're going to grab light red oxide with ultramarine, and since I'm painting wet and wet, I am not adding any more water to this, though I do have quite a bit of water on this brush. Someone did request a video in regards to using these brushes. I'm gonna have to do a specific video on that. But just generally, regardless if you're using a hake brush or any brush, when you go wet and wet, if you keep on adding water, you're going to get those cauliflowers. So try to add more pigment as you progress. More pigment, less water. So a mixture of ultramarine and the light red oxide is going to give us kind of a distant purple. We're using this to put in a background tree line. There's no focus so far with this painting. There's no composition in mind. This is just a general process for making up a scene and just having fun playing with the colors. I do want to keep in mind that I'm going to be looking at trying to go for the fall colors. So we're going to have to switch it up and get those colors on here in a few. Let's bring down a little bit of that just in case you want to get reflections there and here. The nice thing about this approach, this fast and loose approach, is that if I decided that I didn't want this like a lake, a river, water, anything like that here, it's very easy to go over and change. With watercolor, I think that there's the misconception that a lot of people have that you can't erase, you can't change things with watercolor. And I think partially that's due to using the lower quality paper, which starts to pill up and give issues. And there's also the fact that maybe people aren't painting wet and wet. It's just probably those experiences that gave a little bit of issues and gave that misconception. Anyway, I'm mixing burnt umber here with ultramarine. This is to get a dark. And I'm looking at this in terms of where maybe the underhang of the trees would be, or being that it's a higher value, sorry, not high value, a darker tonally. It could be closer trees, so we can kind of be working with our aerial perspective. And I gotta apologize if I'm umming a lot this video. It's been a few days since I've recorded. We had that hurricane hit, so we were out of power and wasn't really able to paint. And then today we got the internet back on. So it's just been, once you kind of don't do something for a few days, it throws you out of your rhythm. I'm thinking I might bring this whole landmass right here and have water reflections here. Play with that. Let's grab some raw sienna, and I'm increasing the pigment load, like I said, as I feed in wet and wet. Letting this go around, I guess you would call it the crown of the trees, the top outer portions, where you would catch more of that glow. I'll bring down little effects if we catch a little bit of that reflection. So this will be kind of the bank line, and we'll have the reflections here. I'm going to grab some burnt umber, and I could use this color as well in this fall foliage. But I could also use it in this closer, deader grass. I do want to grab some Payne's Gray. I haven't cleaned this brush at all so far. I'm just letting the colors collect and mix on it. It's just kind of the way I like to paint. It does make it easier to tend towards mud, but I don't know, it's just something I prefer. Now, one thing I want to point out, I'm not sure how well it shows up in the video, but you can see this texturization right in here in this purple. That's the granulation effect from the ultramarine blue. So if you're looking at pigments, sometimes one of the qualities that will be advertised is if they're granulating or not. Or some brands will have lines that will have granulation in it. And that's what that effect is. That's what they're kind of describing there. I'm taking that mixture on the brush. I think it was most recently the Payne's Gray with a little bit of umber. We have one of the cats is crying for some reason, but he's right there, so he must have a toy or something else to show. Hammy. No, that's Harrison, sorry. Okay, so I'm building up these trees, build up this edge here. We'll probably play around with some scraping effects. And since this is our reflection line, I'm going to go up and down. Just an easy way for me to play around with that. We are quite wet with the paper. In fact, I have pools of water right here. So I do have to be careful with the scraping stage. If I tried to scrape right now, it's just going to backfill. So I'm going to leave that be for a bit, and we'll come back to that. Payne's Gray. Going for that darker. Like I said, with the darker tone, you can either look for shadows, the underhang of the trees, to kind of give it a little bit more depth and dimension to the object itself, or you can lower it down in the picture plane and bring it up as a closer object. And between that change in tonality and where it is linear perspective wise, you can help bring it closer. And you don't have to just rely on darker colors to bring things closer to the viewer and creating that depth. You can use kind of pure pigments and play around with it. You can use more textural effects where it seems more crisp. There's a lot of different things you can do, but at the end it's just playing around and experimenting. See right here, you can see how wet that paper is. Well, we need to get more fall, and why don't we do a wash off of the brush. Pick up, ooh, straight from the tube, alizarin crimson. Remember, this is the U, which I think I pronounced incorrectly, H-U-E. It's the synthetic version of it. The original alizarin crimson is not light fast. It's a fugitive color. So this one has more permanence, and chances are when you buy an alizarin crimson or look at a company line, they might call it alizarin crimson permanent or alizarin crimson U. So look into that and make sure it's light fast, because a lot of people are fans of alizarin crimson and will use it, and a lot of palettes and books call for it, but you don't want to paint something that might fade. And the thing is, some people don't care, which is totally fine, and some people do. And whatever you prefer, you can use things that aren't light fast, and that's totally fine. But just keep in mind, if you are going to sell paintings or give paintings away, just be wary of that. I'm just scraping some trees in now. playing around, adding a little bit of lines, creating form. You could vary your pressure on this scraping effect. I'm using the round end of this card. Here I'm using a flat end to get different effects. Scrape up and down for reflections. All right, now I want to put in closer tree structures that are kind of maybe generated from this region. We'll go here and here, so we'll kind of encompass the sides of this painting. And before I do that, before I really go into those trees, I'm going to do a little wet and wet. And this is mainly the alizarin crimson right here, to get that diffusion in the sky, and it'll allow me to achieve different layers of depth in the closer trees that I wind up putting in. Hopefully you'll see what I mean in a moment. I'm going to take a little bit of raw sienna and feed that in. It's diffusing here. This area is a little dry. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the film. I'm going to use the blow dryer to dry it off, so you don't have to listen to that. Before I do that, I could probably get a little scrapes in the above and below effects. Let me pause that real quick. I'm going to use the blow dryer to dry it. All right, I'm back. And where we were just now was that we had done the wet and wet. It diffused some, and now that it's dry, I can stipple over it with another texture in an effort to create a depth effect, that the crisper lines look closer than that softness right there. And like I said, hopefully the illusion is that we create you know, a tree with life, a tree with depth to it. I'm going to grab some burnt sienna. Can even come down here. I haven't even put the tree trunks in yet. And there's a few different ways we can do that. Grab a little bit of Payne's Gray. Darken up some spots. Let's have a tree start from this area. We'll have a few pop up. And we can have a tree start from this corner. Maybe even coming off the side. And have that guy a little bit closer. So with trees, there's a few different approaches. With this, we'll grab the number 4 rigger if I could find it. I should have had that out and prepared. I apologize for that. Here we go. Number 4 rigger. Actually, we'll do one tree with the number 4 rigger, and then we'll do a tree with the hake so you can see different tree applications. So let's come here. The rigger you can use more as a calligraphy type brush and put those lines in. You can take the side of the rigger for a little texture along this embankment. If you're light-handed enough, you can get thin lines with it, or I use the number 1 rigger. It's just a lot easier for me. A lot of people, you know, the whole Ron Ranson, the hake brush and whatnot, is to both minimize the fussiness and to minimize the amount of you know, tools and utensils and brushes that you have, so that you're not, you know, searching around, playing around, trying to decide what you need to do. It just lets you go to the point where you can kind of just do it and have fun with it. But I know at this point for me how you know, just the brushes, it'll work for me, and that's the way I need to go. Now, if I use the hake for a tree, let me get a mixture first. And this is just burnt umber, ultramarine blue, Payne's gray, just getting a dark. I can take the end and get it to a more chiseled point. This brush is about over 2 years old now, and I've been using it almost daily for 2 years, so it's kind of at this point, I think, a little deformed, but you can go up and do, let's do one with upward strokes, up in this fashion. You can come and dot it in. You can come side to side. You can play with this, the different textural effects of this brush. You can get pretty thin lines and illusion effects with it. So, you know, play around with it and see what you like, and vary your painting up. One piece of advice, and then also I guess it would be like a bad piece of advice, not really sure, is that while I kind of dot this in, I'll kind of ramble and try to put the thought together. That from an outside view with painting and whatnot, if you kind of doing the same thing over and over again, you'll have critics. You'll have people that say, oh, you know, it's the same thing. But then you'll have people that will love that they can identify your works. So I don't really know where I'm going with that thought, and I apologize for that. It's weird because watercolor and painting is an exploration, but it's also a you know, a relaxing thing and enjoyment, something you should be doing, you know, for hopefully for fun and not, you know, for stress or for a deadline or a timeline or anything like that. So, you know, there's kind of those two conflicting ideas. So I'll just move away from that topic. Let's grab the card. You can also scrape that in if you want other texture in your trunks. So there's a lot of different approaches to the trees. And play around with them. Find out what you like. Keep things fresh. But, you know, explore. I'm building up the foliage in this corner. So we have just this stream coming through. We have the bank in the background leading down into it. We have our foreground grass on our side. If you want, you could take a little bit of that squirrel mop, or any brush really, grab a little bit of ultramarine blue and feed that in if you want a little bit more of a watery look. And that ultramarine blue probably gives us more of a impressionist fall feel to it. I'm taking the number 4 now just to start adding in some branches. We could add a closer tree right here. Let's Let's have one come from the other side. Let's give a little more depth to the scene. And I really don't pay too much attention to what pigments I'm using at this point. I just try to get darks, but you can play around. And since we're going for that fall feel, let's get some raw sienna, which I have now just gooped on here. You could feed that in. You don't have to pass over exactly where you just went. You can come out for more depth to this scene, add more branches, more twigs. It's a little too blue. I'll pass over that. Let's grab our hake now. I'll grab some light red oxide. And we'll feed in a stronger foliage. I'm passing over the trunken portions to kind of break up that line. And as I'm building up that, it's creating a wet and wet spot so I could feed in some Payne's Gray for some variety, so it isn't just a splotch of light red oxide. I could even grab alizarin crimson. I'm just going crazy right now with these colors, just having fun. Because usually I like painting the tonalist, the dark and moody style, but there is something about fall foliage that is just so much fun to play with. You can scrape into this paint as we put it down. You can even get twiggy lines and just have fun. Let it be random. Try not to repeat shapes next to each other. We didn't use any sap green, I don't think, which I mentioned the color in the beginning. We don't really need it for this. Let's get this area in here. It's been quite a while since I put people in a scene, but I think it'd be nice if we did that. We didn't even use lemon yellow either. Here's alizarin crimson. Some Payne's Gray for the top of the head. We could have two people walking together. Let's get a bit of ultramarine blue in this mix. Let's make it a couple walking together. We'll give it a light source and put a little reflection in there with them. They're kind of looking in this direction. Let's put a little line, a little illusion of a little dog. Maybe there's something up in the trees for them to look at. Some birds flying overhead. Just put little marks here, little textured effects. You can even put in little trees around them if we want. put in a few small trees on this side of the river, on the far side of the stream along the bank. Use the side. This texture technique I'm not the best at when it comes to trees. People who are really good at it, Alan Owen, people with YouTube to talk about Alan Owen, David Usher. There was Edward Wesson, who I don't think had YouTube. He's deceased. He's an old British painter. They had a deceptively simple approach to tree structures. Just kind of use a dry brush on the side technique. But Alan Owen and David Usher demonstrate that well. So we're near the end of our video. We're going to wind up pausing it in a moment and doing a dry off for us to see the final view of it. I hope you enjoyed. I hope it was interesting. Once again, please consider liking, subscribing, following. If you'd like to support this channel, there's also a link down below for the Patreon. And that has some free content on it. And it's super cheap. It's like $2 or $5. And that helps with, supplies and whatnot. So if you could consider doing that, I'd appreciate it. I also do have artwork up on Etsy. If there's anything that I have done that I don't have listed, because it costs to list and all that, let me know if there's anything you want. But ultimately, just you guys watching this, and if you like and follow, it really helps the channel out. So on that note, let me do a quick pause. Okay, I just dried it off. Let me take this off. We're gonna sign it. Oh, by the way, whenever you if you follow any of these videos and you paint along, which I encourage you to, if you want to go ahead and sell it, if somebody's like, hey, I'd love to buy that from you, you have my permission to sell it. I want you guys to thrive. Art supplies are expensive, and it really feels good whenever somebody likes one of your works. So you have my express permission to do that. So here's a mat. I'm gonna have to get another mat out soon because this one has